Hello and welcome to Honest Faith Conversations. As always, I am your co-host, Miguel Covarrubias.
And I'm Kathy Covarrubias. And we are not going to be reviewing what we told you we'd be reviewing.
Yeah, we kind of got home from our trip to see family for Christmas. And we decided we don't have enough energy or attention span to actually sit through the 4 hours that is It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, so instead, what we decided to do is watch the first episode of Season 4 of Black Mirror, entitled USS Callister.
And it is a Christmas episode. I mean, December 24th played very prominently in the entire episode.
Yep, they kept bringing up, it's coming out Christmas Eve?
Yeah.
Christmas Eve? How can it be Christmas Eve?
And it played Silent Night at the end of the episode.
It did. So there's Christmas in there.
There is Christmas in there. So we are keeping up with our Christmas holiday special.
Yeah, you can't argue that it's not a Christmas movie.
There you go.
Right?
Well, it's like Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
Die Hard's not a Christmas movie.
Die Hard's a Christmas movie.
Whatever.
So, with all that being said, spoiler alert, if you have not yet begun the 4th season of Black Mirror, this is the very first episode of that season. It did just come out, so we are on the ball for this one, primarily because it gets piped right into our house.
Yes.
So, we don't get out to see movies very often, but, this one was on Netflix.
Yes. So
hooray.
Hooray.
Again, happy holidays. This is, today's the 31st. That would be the 6th day of Christmas. So happy 6th day of Christmas. We will have 6 more days of Christmas.
Happy New Year's Eve.
Happy New Year's Eve and New Year's. May it be a fantastic 2018 for you.
I mean, it has to be better than 2017.
Yeah, 2017 was a little bit disappointing, but,
Yeah.
There's a few reasons for that. Happy other holidays that are continuing now. I know that Hanukkah is over. Let's see. I have no idea when Kwanzaa was this year, so.
I think it's the same days, but I don't know. I'm very bad. I'm sorry. If anybody wants to tell us, I'm sure we could look it up right now and say what it is, but my phone's downstairs, and I'm not willing to walk downstairs right now.
And happy Orthodox Christmastide as well, because that's coming up as well. I know that's not the same time as the Roman Catholic Christmastide. So.
Yep.
So let us go into our review and summary of this episode. My brief summary is it's like one of the typical Black Mirror anthology episodes where it is self-contained and it is about technology and the horrors of technology. In fact, within the first episode here, I was kind of thinking, man, we don't have laws against some of this stuff.
Yeah, we don't.
Like taking people's DNA and scanning it and stuff like this. Anyway, what happens is a computer programmer has developed this massively multiplayer online game and has made his own modification to it that he keeps on his home system, that he scans people's DNA into his system, which creates sentient programs. And turns out the sentient programs are the protagonist of this episode. That's my summary.
That's a good one. My summary is, I guess, lonely, misunderstood, middle-aged man has a video game, and he loses himself within the video game and kind of loses his grip on what is right and wrong.
Okay.
That's pretty good, right?
Well, I feel like you are trying to indict me a little bit by looking at me while you're saying.
I know. I was looking at you to see if you're...
I kind of divide that up between, like, a few moments here and there when I can.
Yeah, like at most when Peter is sleeping. So,
yes.
Yeah, no, I was not looking at you. Don't worry.
I really liked this episode. It was on par with Black Mirror. I thought that a few of the episodes after Netflix took over Black Mirror, I thought, they kind of dropped the ball a little bit, but this one kind of hit right into where they usually are with the anthology, with the keeping in tune with the whole horrors of technology thing that it was doing before.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I also liked it because I am a big, like, everything space related nerd. Like I know people are going to hate me for saying this, but I like Star Wars and Star Trek equally, and that's when we lose some viewers.
Out of our loyal 13 listeners.
Yes. Um, so I enjoyed it because, like, I've thought about this kind of thing before. Like, oh, what if I was the captain of my own, starship? What if I was the next, captain?
Captain Janeway. Mm-hmm. There is a Twitter handle that actually is pretty excellent. It's called Christian Janeway, and she's a Christian Resistance member. I really appreciate that Twitter handle. I just have to say. So, anyway, let's jump right into it. So, really, I wanted to go in a direction that I'm not sure that the writers originally kind of had planned for this episode, primarily because this is what I pulled out from the episode, and essentially it's our podcast and we can do what we want. So
we can do what we want. We're adults.
Yeah. So I really wanted to talk about imagining others as complexly as you imagine yourself. And I know this is going to get a little abstract in my whole thought process of how I pulled this out of this episode. So I ask that you bear with me for just a second while I go into this. Okay, so I am a writer. I've been really kind of jumping into this whole storytelling thing and trying to figure out how to communicate stories, how to communicate characters. Because as a writer, you'll find out that characters kind of become more and more developed for you. They become more and more three-dimensional, as it were, in your imagination. And this is the problem that we see too often in storytelling, is that you have these two-dimensional characters, and I liken this to Marvel. You know how Marvel has these really very two-dimensional characters that are villains in it, that really Thor is, or Loki. Loki's the only one that's really fleshed out for
the most part.
For the most part, in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yep.
You do have a few that maybe got some motivation, but ultimately
Like the
they're
Vulture.
still like two-dimensional.
Yeah.
Like the Vulture, Vulture really wasn't a good example because he's a little bit more fleshed out, but Whiplash is one that had motivation but was still two-dimensional.
Yeah.
And Iron Man too. Let's see.
Their motivations are very surface level.
Very surface
for the most
level.
part.
Yeah. You killed my father. I am come for revenge.
Yep. Or I want this thing that you have, so I'm going to take it.
Yeah. And so I think that ultimately what it comes down to is imagining characters as having these fully complex and realized lives. And I think that really that's why I liken it to Marvel, is because the only one that they've really done so is Loki. I mean, Loki has this complex life that, was developed in the first Thor movie, that he really, honestly, I know that I'm going to get some backlash for this, but this is a controversial issue. I did not like the first Thor movie. But the best character out of the first Thor movie was Loki.
I don't think you're going to get much backlash on that. I preferred Thor 2.
Well, a lot of people preferred Thor 1 over Thor 2.
Okay.
I know. It was not better, in my opinion.
No.
And the reason why I bring this up is because I think that here in this episode you see a character that is kind of fully realized, and I see him falling into the same problems that a lot of writers do, is that they don't see their characters as full end. Mm-hmm. Is that when he developed his own mod, that he essentially, I can imagine him going in the first couple of times, playing through and thinking, well, this doesn't add anything to my life because it's two-dimensional. I wrote it. I know how it's going to play out. It's not fun for me because I already know it. I already know the script. And so I think that afterwards, that's when he did first pull his partner into his thing by scanning his DNA and putting him in there and making him an accidental sentient creation.
Yeah.
But then he tried to force that sentience, that 3D character, that fully fleshed out character, into a 2-dimensional storyline, which was not going to happen. Because ultimately, I can imagine that, as it was in this episode, I'm not sure that this would actually happen if you scan somebody's DNA into there, that they would have all the memories up until that point. But a digital clone, let's call it a digital clone.
Yeah.
That the digital clones have all the memories up until that point, and I can imagine that can be, well, mentally shattering for anybody.
Yeah.
You know, is in essence, you're trapped now. You're trapped into this simulation, and that's probably likened to us as human beings. If we were suddenly to realize that we were just simulations in a computer program, that it would probably be a huge mental break for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But here in this, you've got a very limited space. You've got his own version of what his favorite show was, and you know, it's not.
And your joys have been taken away.
Exactly.
Like he modified them to where, you know, their bits are no longer there. They look like Ken and Barbie down there.
Yeah.
And I think I remember them saying that they don't sleep. Like there's no need to sleep.
Yeah, there's no sleep. There's the alcohol has no effect, but they're still going to drink it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's he essentially stripped them out of the more fun things that make humans human.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And you know, this is something that I really think that he really could have taken a writer's approach to this. Is that he really could have done this in his own life. He really could have made a difference in his own life. And you see in the very beginning of the episode where he's kind of treated poorly, and you know, he could have said to his partner, "Hey, look, I'm a human being. I am just as complex as you are. I have needs. I have, you know, wants as well. I'm a full partner of this business because I developed this thing.
Yeah.
I'm the one that coded it.
Yep.
You're just the guy who did the business."
Yep.
Which that's not diminishing him at all, because I'm sure that if I were to ever write something that, you know, was fantastic, that I would have no idea how to market it or get it out there.
Well, and the thing is, like...
Just like with the podcast. I don't know how to market it or get it out there.
So, again, it just comes down to communication. It's always, every single time in our podcast, it's always like, that's what I bring up again.
It all comes down to communication.
It all comes down to communication. If people had just opened up and said, hey, I deserve more respect.
That's what we can also think about. We'll hear about this here in a few minutes.
Okay, sorry.
Another name for what we can name the podcast. It all comes down to communication.
Yeah, that's...
Everything boils back to communication.
That'll be the second line of the name.
The subtitle.
The subtitle. Everything boils down to communication.
It all comes down to communication. Well, and I think that this is something that, you know, we don't imagine other people as complexly as we imagine ourselves. Mm-mm. And I mean, even with our favorite TV shows, with our worlds that we love to be a part of, that we don't really imagine what those characters' day-to-day lives really are like, that they're more complex than we even see on the screen. Sometimes, you know, there are some people who begin to imagine that and write fan fiction of whatever it is. And I'm not knocking fan fiction, because there are some excellent writers out there who have done some excellent fan fiction work, and then there are some that are just, they really want romances between the brothers in Supernatural, which I think is just weird.
Yep.
Because Sam and Dean are brothers, and that's just weird.
Yes, I agree.
And then they'll bring Castiel into it for some reason. But so ultimately, this is a fan fiction for him. Is creating this world, is creating his favorite. Well, it's Star Trek. It's the original series of Star Trek that he's created here in this, and they can call it Space Federation, but we all know it's Star Trek.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the new one that Matt
The Orville?
Yeah, Orville. Which it's kind of fan fiction. We all know it's Star Trek.
Yeah.
But, his own version of Star Trek. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, the only reason why he created the Orville was because he's desperately wanted to, head up the project for Star Trek for such a long time. And they were like, nope, sorry.
Well, and that's the reason why is because of what he's already done in the Orville. He's already made fun of religion a few times in it, whereas I feel like Gene Roddenberry was a lot more understanding and accepting of all religions, whereas he was an atheist himself.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that I really don't like when people are very militantly against something. And that's,
or for it. Anytime there's you're that hardcore, that militant about something, you got your own issues you got to work on. Exactly.
And we'll obviously talk about this more here in a few weeks when we do our
yes.
Star Wars episode. But, that's just a preview of things to come.
Yeah, we're sorry. We kind of got off track a little bit. Let's rally ourselves back onto...
Anyway, it's his own fan fiction, and this is what I'm getting is that I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be as unhappy in his own life if he would actually take this approach to his life, is figuring out that he is the author of his own story. He writes his own story. That the new person, the new employee, was obviously interested in him.
Yeah.
She really liked his code. She really liked, what he did. And if he would just talk to her, it all comes down to communication. Yeah. If he would just talk to her and be like, hey, you want to get some coffee sometime and talk about this code that, I wrote? And, I'd love to talk about it because it's something that I made.
Yeah.
But instead, he's become obsessed with his fan fiction. He becomes fully engrossed in his video game that he made.
Yep.
And it ultimately kills him. Which,
well, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, you don't see him actually dead at the end, but it's implied that it killed him. And I think it boils down to both the communication and also imagining others as complexly as you imagine yourself. Is thinking of the rich and detailed life that everybody else leads, that everybody has their own struggles, everybody has their own issues that they're dealing with. They have their own stories. That they're not just NPCs in your own story. Mm-hmm. That everybody is a player character. That real world life is a PvP arena. It is not or let's see, more, I would say cooperative arena. That is not just player versus environment. That we are not just NPCs. That everyone around us has the capacity to think and understand just the way that we do. And I think this is something that we fail ultimately when we listen to these stories, when we go into these other worlds, is that we think of everybody else as NPCs. Mm-hmm. And that everybody else is two-dimensional, therefore. And I think that we develop much deeper worlds when we actually realize that. We actually realize people as complexly as we imagine ourselves. And I think the best books, the best pieces of media that I've ever consumed are those that really flesh out their characters, that really give their characters motivations and give them more of a fully realized complexity.
Well, yeah, it's those authors that could tell you the character's complete backstory without actually writing it down.
Yeah,
J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know why I just blinked on J.K. Rowling's
That's
name.
okay. I'm glad I knew what you were trying to say.
Yeah, like J.K. Rowling, she knows the entire history of every single one of her characters, and this is something that I'm sure that a lot of writers do, is that they become fully invested in these characters. They know, I know me as a writer, and I've got 2 novels that I'm working on right now, that each of these characters, I can tell you pretty much everything about these characters, and it's trying to figure out how to do that in a way that it communicates these characters well, and it really does them justice as complex characters within my own mind, kind of thing. And I think this is something that ultimately led to the problem of this entire episode, was that he didn't imagine other people as complexly as he imagined himself. That he wanted to get them, he wanted them that sentience, but he also wanted them to be, random number generators in his own writing.
Or it could be that he does recognize them as being complex, but he wants to put them into the two-dimensional realm that they put him into in real life.
Oh, that's true. Which, that has a lot to do with his own motivations, and, they did write him as an excellent character.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But something I think it also kind of brings up, another theme is, like, what constitutes somebody as being a violent person? Because we see him, like, in the game, like, he clearly has, like, these weird, terrible, awful, horrific ideas of, like, what he wants to do to people. But in the real life, he doesn't act upon it, obviously. And, like, he doesn't have the power to do some of the stuff that he has done to the other crew members.
Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot. Like, we see those people who are, like, really, really shy on the outside. But sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes those are the people who also have, like, those terrible monsters that are, like, hiding deep inside as well. In fact, a lot of serial killers are like this. How many times have you, like, seen the interviews of, like, the neighbors who are like, I can't believe he did this. Like, I can't believe that this person, like, had dead bodies in the basement. Or, you see that all the time, don't you?
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to Mindhunter and how they were developing that. And they were basically saying, criminals are just two-dimensional characters in this grander story of life.
Yeah.
And it was ultimately bringing it down to saying, no, they're complex individuals.
Yes.
There's deeper motivations there.
Yep. And motivations behind what they do.
Yeah.
Especially those ones who are trying to go about doing devious things in the real world. Like, you see them moving to rural areas, or you see them, like, stationing, like, their garbage can in a certain area, or, like, planting something in a weird place because they're trying to hide the fact that there's bodies underneath. But they're always trying to hide their true self, which is exactly what he's doing when he creates his own realm.
Yeah.
Is he's trying to hide his true feelings, his true intentions, by having another kind of outlet just for himself, like his own, like, secret thing that nobody else knows about.
Well, and I think this is something else that can harken back to that, is that I think stories are meant to be shared. Mm-hmm. That, we need to share that deep inner life with the outside world, is that sometimes it's hard to do that. But we'll get to that.
Yeah. Again, it boils down to communication. Well, and I just want to, like, throw out there, too, that a lot of people assume that violent adults were violent children, especially some of the stories that they have heard from, like, serial killers. But a lot of the times, violent children are just lashing out on their circumstances that are completely outside of their control. And a lot of the times they grow up to be very functional human beings. And so we can't place judgment on children who are violent when they're young.
Well, and a lot of it has to do with frustrations of everyday life. Mm-hmm. Like our son, I know that he's not violent by nature, but he gets frustrated because he can't communicate yet.
Yes, besides shoo and what you doing?
Yeah. So he'll end up whacking me in the face with this plastic saxophone.
Just because he wants to communicate something to you, but he doesn't know how to yet. And so he just gets frustrated. But
it all boils down to communication.
But the nice thing about, because you mentioned something about how they don't have an outlet for their anger yet. And video games really are a good outlet. Like, in this circumstance, it's not just because of, what he's created. But in most circumstances for people, video games are a good outlet to release that anger. So instead of going around and, like, causing property damage or, like, trying to hurt animals, like, they will be at home, playing a video game, getting out that aggression instead. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's like that big conversation about whether or not violent video games do or do not create criminals and violent people. I would say with the amount of people who play like those type of games versus the amount of people who are criminals, it's not very likely that video games are the sole cause of people's violent tendencies.
Well, I think this is something that a sociologist can study is with the rise of video games. If the amount of violent crime has gone down, there may be just a correlation, but not causation, because we don't have a control.
Exactly.
So
yeah, I think I'm trying to. For some reason, I remember reading something about that. Right, the time that we're in right now is a lot less violent than previous generations, but it's just that because of the media, we hear about more stuff that happen. So it makes it seem like it's a more violent world, but it really isn't.
Well, I think that a lot of the aggression does get taken out virtually, and that's what makes Black Mirror so terrifying sometimes. Is because I can just imagine like being inside of a massively multiplayer online game where it's complete immersive virtual reality that
you can and can't do that are just written within the code that it's just not an option. So it prevents you from doing that. Of course, there's battles and that kind of stuff that'll still happen, obviously. But
just take a look at DayZ, at the way that people just interact with each other online through that video game. That's shows the dregs of society right there.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, but still, there's a certain. I mean, there's still a certain limit to what they can and can't do. It's not like it's an infinite thing that they can just
permanently kill somebody.
Exactly. Yep. And the nice thing about video games, I feel, is that it allows you to be violent, to let go of that aggression in a safe manner. I've popped in Skyrim and I'm just gonna kill everything I see. I'm just gonna do it. But that doesn't make me a violent person. I just don't go out and punch everybody, If you know me personally, you know that that's far from what I would do. I'm not going to go on a random rampage and just punch everybody. But sometimes I feel like I want to, so I go on to Skyrim and I feel better afterwards.
Well, that's why she's always a brawler in
I am
video games.
I'm very much a Leroy Jenkins. I'm not going to lie.
Leroy Jenkins.
I have no strategy. I just run in, kill everything, and just move on.
Whereas I am the type that, sits back, takes my time, figures out the patterns and will sneak in places and be arranged bow and arrow or crossbow or something. But
I build up my stats. My very first thing I do is I build up my health stat as much as I possibly can. As well as I can. That way I hardly ever die. So, there's that. Anyway, sorry, we're going off down. Yeah. I guess it's still on the topic of video games, which is, something that is involved in this episode. Oh gosh, where was I going to go with that? But anyway, so it clearly allows for a healthy release for most people. But I do want to bring up, in Robert's case, with his video game, the AI is sentient. And I worry about him because if he has no problem hurting sentient beings within a video game, he most likely has no problem hurting people in real life if it boils down to it.
Well, and I can imagine for those people who play The Sims, that's different, because they're not sentient.
They're not.
Sims.
Yes, they're simulations.
Simulations, which I can almost guarantee almost everybody's killed off their sim by keeping them in a room or removing the ladder from the pool, setting the house on fire.
Oh my goodness gracious! Yeah, no, that happens, but But in Robert's case, he knows that they're sentient. Like, he knows that they have memories and that they truly have real thoughts and feelings, and they can develop their own goals without him interacting with them. So the fact that he knows that, but he still does the stuff that the torturous things that he does to them just really bothers me. And it makes me feel like if he was given that power in the real world without having any consequences, he probably would do it. He can get away. He does what he does in the video game because he can get away with it because there's no consequences to it.
Yep. Which, he's firewalled it off from the internet, from the main servers. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But then here comes Annette, who has studied exactly what he has done. I mean, he is her idol. Like, so of course she's going to study what he's done in the past and try to, upgrade what he's done. So of course she's going to outsmart him.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Anyway. And what he does to Tommy the son, like, that just is, that, you know what that means, right? That Tommy is still out there in space. Like, he can still, like, think and feel.
Well, if Robert actually let him stay in there, or if he's actually deleted the code, so.
But probably not, because he's a monster in this virtual world.
It's true.
Anyway, where do we go from here?
Well, I think this is something that human beings kind of tend to do, is to oversimplify stories. I think this is something that, especially with ancient texts, with ancient stories, that we can't imagine the complex lives of the people who actually lived them. Mm-hmm. Like, here's a prime example. Here's something that is going to be controversial when I say it, is that Jesus. Nobody imagines him as a complex individual. You just have this two-dimensional God-man, larger-than-life, superhero kind of image of this man, whereas the historical Jesus was probably much different than the picture that we have from even the Gospels, from Josephus, from any other sources, that, he probably was just an itinerant preacher guy.
Yep.
And would not say, no, I am not God. What are you doing? Stop worshiping me. I'm trying to reform this Jewish religion. Mm-hmm. And, there's, like, all of those, like Abraham and let's see, Noah, like all of these people who we've given these larger than life, legend status to, that we don't imagine their lives as complexly as we imagine our own lives. And of course, we're going to be getting more into this in Star Wars Last Jedi episodes, because, spoilers for that. We will not go any further into that. But I really think that this is something that we need to do, is to begin to imagine other people, imagine characters as complexly as we imagine ourselves. Try to get into the shoes of the characters that we encounter from day to day. We are the authors of our own stories, and remembering that the characters in those stories are as complex as we are.
And I feel like that I should also extend that invitation to people that you interact with online.
Yes.
Because even if you disagree with them, they still have motivations behind what they think and feel. Now, there are obvious cases to where that's obviously a bot, so you just got to disengage because there's not going to be any point in it. But in some of the circumstances, when you're interacting with strangers online, listen, ask questions. Like, ask them a question, see if you can get an honest response, and kind of go from there.
Well, I think this is also have to do with the violence part of it as well, is that when we begin to do that, our empathy begins to grow. Mm-hmm. And I think that empathy is a big part of how we treat characters in a sense in every story, including video games. Like, for instance, I cannot find it very easy to make a character in something like Fallout and have that character be just completely heartless and going around killing everybody it meets and stuff like that. That's hard for me to do.
Yeah.
Because of my empathetic responses towards things.
Even when I try to play an evil character, I end up becoming more neutral. So I'll be good, but then I'll also be evil. Like I can't just be purely evil.
Yeah. Well, that's what my thieves usually do is that, oh yeah, I'll steal stuff, but I'll give to those who need giving to, and I'll help people when they need helping. Mm-hmm. Like in Skyrim, I'm I usually do thieving stuff and join the Thieves Guild, but still, give to like the poorer people and stuff like that. And so,
yep, I just go around smashing things.
Yeah, I know. And I think that ultimately boils down to do you have firewalls in your own head against the empathy? Mm-hmm. Do you turn off the empathy when you play video games, or is your empathy without firewalls?
Or do you turn off your empathy when you interact with people, like in real life or online?
Exactly, and I think that's something that we can all use a bit more of, is a bit more empathy and compassion towards our fellow man. Which I really don't think that this is where the whole theme or the writers were planning on going with this episode of Black Mirror, but that's where we went, because this is our podcast and we do what we want.
We're adults.
We're adults. Speaking of our podcast and doing what we want, here's what's coming up for our schedule. Next week we are doing the best of 2017. We are going to be doing our top 10s.
Yes.
Of what our favorite episodes were and what our favorite points from those top 10 episodes. So we will be doing that next week, and I will try to pull together clips from those and try to make it sound okay.
Good luck.
Thanks. In 2 weeks, we are doing Star Wars The Last Jedi, and that's going to be a 2-part episode because I walked away from watching that movie and going, wow, there's a lot for me to talk about.
Yes, agreed.
And then in 3 weeks, hopefully we'll get a babysitter and go see Thor Ragnarok by that time.
If it's still in theaters.
If it's still in theaters. Or if we can find a dollar theater. Or we can rent it somehow.
Yes.
So if you have anything to say about those, or even if you have something to say about your favorite top 10 episodes of 2017, because we've got about 55 of them out there, give us a call at 720-372-3879. We also have an idea of something that we've been playing with, and we figure that we're gonna get it done. We're gonna do it in the next month. So what we're doing is we're renaming the podcast. We are going to be renaming it from Honest Faith Conversations. Well, because it was underneath the Honest Faith, which was my blog, my whole development there. So we're still going to be under that umbrella, but we're thinking of a few other names of what we can name it. We're going to put out a survey out there, and just to kind of see what you guys think of our names. We do have a couple of favorites that we've already come up with, but we want your guys' opinions on those, and we will reserve the right to choose whichever one we want.
Yes.
Because we're not going to name our podcast something silly just because...
Bodie McBoat Pants?
Yeah, Bodie McBoat Pants or Bodie McBoat Face. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But here are a few of the things that we've come up with, like the New Gnostics.
The Media Gods.
Media Gods. Let's see. The Saints of Pop Culture. Mm-hmm. This Is Not My World. Mm-hmm. Which, yeah. And... let's see. It all comes down to communication, which
comes down to communication.
we just came up with a few minutes ago. But anyway, if you've got a few suggestions for us as well, you can also give us a call or a text at that phone number, which I just gave you. And again, that is 720-372-3879. You can also find us on social media. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/Real Honest Faith. We're on Twitter at Real Honest Faith. We are also on Reddit and on Tumblr and basically almost every social media that you can imagine that we're on there. Instagram, which hasn't been updated since probably January of last year. Yeah, so we're on social media. Find us there. Give us your suggestions, and even tell us about your favorite episodes of ours from this past year. We may even use your comments in our episode next week. So get it to us by Saturday next week to let us know what your favorites are.
Or it's Saturday this week.
Yes, you can also email it to us at honestfaithconvos@gmail.com. And with all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye!